States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will the clerk call roll, please?
Counselor Bolin?
Here.
Counselor Furlow is absent. Counselor Grizzle?
Here.
Counselor Reeskamp?
Here.
Counselor Stoddard?
Here.
Counselor Steinhubel?
Here.
Thank you. Approval of council minutes, July 10th, 2019, regular session minutes. Were there any corrections or additions?
Move for approval. Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the council minutes from July 10th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The minutes are approved. Consent calendar. We have the agenda for tonight. We have an agreement, Partners for Progress, DBA Lebanon Downtown Association, agreement renewal. We have the Arts Commission May 10th, 20th board minutes, Planning Commission June 19th board minutes, Trees and Trail Advisory Committee board minutes. East River Connector Trail Hill easement is on the list, and a liquor license for DK1 Investments, DBA Bobo's Eats and Grog, full on-premises commercial.
Move for approval.
Second it.
Been moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar for tonight. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Consent calendar is approved. Sorry about that. Okay. Several proclamations here. And the first one I'll read is Patriot Day, September 11th, 2019. Whereas the terrorist attacks that occurred on September 11th, 2001 changed America forever. Thousands of innocent lives were lost in these terrible events, but in no way was this tragic day a defeat in our country. And whereas, instead of dividing our nation on crushing our resolve, September 11, 2001 unified our country, strengthened our resolve, and deepened our commitment to liberty, equality, and justice. And whereas, out of this tragedy flowed generosity, hope, and unity, where citizens nationwide demonstrated extraordinary bravery and compassion. The people of America gained a new appreciation for what it means to be a hero and a patriot by witnessing the unwavering loyalty of our firefighters, police, medical, emergency personnel, first responders, and individuals who put the safety of their co-workers and friends above their own. And whereas we take time to acknowledge those who have worked diligently to honor the memories of all victims. Therefore, in memory of the heroes whose lives were tragically lost, and special recognition of courageous men and women everywhere who selflessly risked their own lives to save others and protect our liberty, I, Mayor Paul R. Aziz, do hereby proclaim September 11, 2019 as Patriot Day and National Day of Service and Remembrance, and call upon all citizens to observe this day with gratitude and patriotism, to make a personal pledge to honor and cherish the freedom that defines America. Next one up is September 2019 Preparedness Month. Whereas the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, along with other federal, state, local, private, and volunteer agencies, is working to deter, prevent, and respond to all types of natural and technological emergencies. And whereas the City of Lebanon recognizes that we are all susceptible to such emergencies and demonstrate a broad need for citizens of Lebanon to have a plan for response and recovery in the event of emergency. And whereas Preparedness Month creates an important opportunity for our community to learn more about preparing for all types of emergencies. And whereas all citizens are encouraged to take preparedness measures before, during, and after a major emergency by making preparedness a priority in their schools, businesses, communities, and homes by following 4 simple steps: build an emergency kit, make an emergency plan, be informed, get involved. And whereas the Lebanon community is encouraged to participate in citizens preparedness activities and review the Oregon Office of Emergency Management website, and we have the website listed here, and that'll be on our Facebook page, for Preparedness Month. Now, therefore, as Mayor of the City of Lebanon and in support of National Preparedness Month, I do hereby proclaim September 2019 Preparedness Month in the City of Lebanon, Oregon. And I have to say that I've done a lot of preparedness in the past, and I saw that movie and presentation that the Red Cross did. I believe it was the Red Cross, the Shakeout, I think it was, and they brought facts about the subduction zone and all the things that could happen here. And if you do not have an emergency preparedness kit, I just beg you to get something. Just be prepared, because we can be cut off for a long time. And when I go to the mayor's convention, all the mayors talk about it, the coast will be cut off from us. We could be cut off from eastern Oregon. So it's really important to make sure that we're prepared. September 2019, National Senior Center Month, Building Momentum. Whereas older Americans are significant members of our society, investing their wisdom and experience to help enrich and better the lives of younger generations. And whereas the Lebanon Senior Center has acted as a catalyst for mobilizing the creativity, energy, vitality, and commitment of the older residents of Lebanon, Oregon. And whereas through the wide array of services, programs, and activities, senior centers empower older citizens to contribute to their own health and well-being and the health and well-being of their fellow citizens of all ages. And whereas the Lebanon Senior Center affirms the dignity, self-worth, and independence of older persons, facilitating their decisions and actions, tapping their experiences, skills, and knowledge, and enabling their continued contributions to the community. Now, therefore, I, Paul R. Aziz, Mayor of Lebanon, do hereby proclaim September 2019 National Senior Center Month and call upon all citizens to recognize the special contributions of the Senior Center participants and the special efforts of the staff and volunteers who work every day to enhance the well-being of the older citizens of our community. Okay, and with that, next up we have Kristen Stein talking about the U.S. 2020 Census.
Kristen Stein, 1645 Southwest Martin Street, Corvallis, 97333. I'm from the Census Bureau, and I'm here to talk about what's going to be happening in the run-up to the fabulous census count next year. So, the road to 2020. This is why we do a census every 10 years. Article 1, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution mandates that we count every person living in the United States. The key purpose of that is to apportion the 435 seats belonging to the U.S. House of Representatives. Oregon is scheduled to get one more representative this year or next year because the population in Oregon has exploded exponentially, and everyone in Salem's really excited about that. We don't know exactly when that's going to be happening. Oops, what did I do? Okay, 2020 Census Goal is to count everyone once, only once, and in the right place. That's our motto. We're sticking to it. The information we collect is private and confidential. We only report aggregate data. We don't report to the government anything personal. We're prohibited by law from releasing personal information to any person or organization under USC Title 13 after what happened to the Japanese during World War II. Title 13 was tightened up considerably so that the Census Bureau doesn't have to give out data anymore. It's against the law. We all take a lifetime oath that we don't divulge any personal information we come across, that we see, that we collect, that's laying on a piece of paper that we happen to see. We can go to prison and get fined a considerable amount for that. Uh-oh, I'm going the wrong way.
Okay.
All right. These are the questions we ask. We ask 9 questions. We ask for people's name, address, phone number, gender. Anyone can put any gender they want. We don't care. We don't judge. Age and date of birth. Names of other people living at that particular address. A relationship to other inhabitants at that address. A race. And whether someone is of Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin. Those are all the questions that we ask. Does anyone have any questions about that? Nope? Okay. Census count determines state funding. Total funding that the federal government returns to all 50 states is $13.5 billion. Oregon's share of that on page 2 of this, oops, page 2 of this, right here, is $13,452,034,000. That's the money that Oregon gets back from the federal government every year. And on the back of this paper, these are all the programs that money's divvied up to. That $13 billion gets divided up into programs for WIC, TANF, child care, adoption assistance, school breakfast and lunch programs, Section 8, Head Start, youth activities, block grants, crime victim assistance. All these programs are where that $13 billion shakes out. Oregon's per capita estimate is $3,200 a person. So for every person that gets counted in the census in Oregon, Oregon gets $3,200 a person every year for the next 10 years. And herein lies the problem. This is outlined in black here, that's the Lebanon census tract. It's pretty large, and Lebanon's kind of not quite in the middle of it, but it's in there. In 2010, the low response rate for Lebanon, the Lebanon census tract, was 22%. What that means is 1,720 people about were not counted. In that census tract, the population of Lebanon was 7,822 in 2010. An undercount of 22% means 1,700 people did not get counted. If you multiply that by $3,200 a person, that means $5.5 million Oregon has not received each year since 2010. And the undercount problem is the reason why I go to these community meetings and talk about the undercount issue, because it's a really big problem all over Oregon, all over the U.S. These are the top 6 hard-to-count populations in every county in the United States: renters, senior citizens, children younger than 5, foreign-born immigrants, homeless people, and migrant workers. In the Lebanon census tract, we can't figure out why they're hard to count, because we can't find them to ask them. They're hard to locate, they're hard to contact, and when we do contact them, they're hard to persuade for one reason or another. They're hard to interview. It's just a mess, and we've been trying really hard to come up with ways to mitigate that particular issue.
Excuse me, when you
Yes.
say the Lebanon area, is it like the 97355 zip code, or is it the city
No,
limits of Lebanon?
It's a large census tract that encompasses Lebanon, plus several other unincorporated areas where people are living. It's defined by geographical boundaries like rivers, or like a mountain range on one side or a river on another, or a county drop-off seat on the other side. They're all different.
Thank you.
Yeah. In the Lebanon census tract, 54% of the population living here are renters, and that's extraordinarily high. A possible reason for undercounting renters is they're more transient, they move frequently. Maybe they have less community involvement, or maybe they're apathetic. We don't know, because we can't get a hold of them to ask them. Senior citizens 62 or older in the Lebanon census tract, that's about 18% of the population. Possible reasons for undercounting them are physical isolation. Maybe they have mental health issues. Maybe they feel like they don't matter. Excuse me. We really don't know. We have all kinds of outreach activities working with senior centers and Meals on Wheels and the Dial-A-Bus people, the organizations that take elderly people to their doctor's appointments. We're putting advertising on buses and getting the Meals on Wheels delivery people to talk to their elderly patrons. And if any of you have any ideas about that, we'd be thrilled to hear about them. Children under the age of 5 in the Lebanon census tract, that's about 10%. That's also extraordinarily high for Oregon. Possible reasons for undercounting children under 5 are split custody. Maybe one parent has the children and the other parent thinks they're going to count them, but they don't, or the other parent has the kids and they don't get counted, or both of them count them and they cancel each other out. So starting in September, we're having a Statistics in Schools program where the younger children get coloring books and they get lessons on how much they count. And then when the census comes out, could you remind your parents to fill it out? And we're hoping that they'll go home and talk to their parents. And then when the census questionnaire comes, it won't be so much of a shock, and they'll just fill it out. Another problem we're having more and more is grandparents are raising their grandchildren, and the grandparents live in age-restricted housing. They don't want to tell the census taker, I have little kids living here, because it's against the rules. They're afraid we'll tell someone and they might get into trouble. We don't tell anyone. We're only interested in if there are children living there. Not counting 100 or 200 children could be the difference in not getting adoption assistance for those grandparents, or not getting a daycare center or a Head Start facility that would be needed in that area. So we're looking for ways to change that outcome. Foreign-born residents in the Lebanon census tract is about 2%. That's not really large. People may not understand the language. They may be afraid of talking to census workers for one reason or another. Maybe they're unaware of the constitutional requirement. Other countries do a census differently. They count people differently. You register in an office and then you're done, or other things like that. On the homeless count, I don't have good statistics for Lebanon using the point-in-time statistics from 2017. They estimate individuals living in non-sheltered environments just in Lynn County are 180 in 2017. I'm sure that's not accurate, but there isn't really anything we can do about it. They don't want to be counted. They just don't get counted. Over 2 days in February and March, over 2 nights, we're going to go out and we're going to count all the homeless people in the country. And we're going to have warming shelters and people who know where to get the day-old donuts and the coffee and things. And then we're going to piggyback on the point-in-time people with their HUD questionnaires, and then we're going to count the homeless that way. Any questions about that? No? Okay. Migrant workers in Lynn County, there are about 1,700 in 2018 according to the OSU database info. That figure does not include family members that accompany the workers. Migrant workers are often very family-oriented. They take their kids, their grandparents, their in-laws, brothers and sisters, and they all move from farm to farm. We're trying to outreach to farmers and ranchers in the areas because they know their workers the best. They provide facilities for them to live in while they're working for them. We could go in and just bully our way in there and try to count them, and they'd run from us because they don't know us, but they know they're farmers and they trust their employers. So we're working on ways to deal with that. 2020 marks the first time internet and phone options are available for self-reporting. Our hope is that everybody self-reports the first time they get their little postcard in the mail, but we know that's not realistic. In the Lebanon census tract, 21% of the people asked reported no internet access in their home. And that's just one question. That's not asking them, do you have a smartphone? Do you use the computer at the library? Do you sit in the Starbucks parking lot and piggy bank on the free Wi-Fi? This is just one question. 21% admitted that they have no internet access.
What year was that number from?
That's from 2018. That's from the American Community Survey. Have you heard of the ACS? That's every 2 years. That's another census thing that we're not involved in. Where we are in the timeline right now is we just started address canvassing on August 4th, and I believe all the police departments in the country have been notified that census workers will be going from tract to tract with giant bags that say U.S. Census Bureau on them and giant badges around their neck that say U.S. Census Bureau and computers that have these big census logos on them. Excuse me. So there's no mistaking who we are and what we're doing. We're going from tract to tract to tract and noting all of the new addresses that were not in place in 2010. And then we're going to use that information to send out the postcards to people, asking them to answer the census questions online. So I'm a partnership specialist, and this is my job. I go out and try to educate people and encourage community partners to encourage their constituents. Don't be afraid of the census. Just answer the questions, and then we'll leave you alone. If you don't answer them, if you don't respond to the postcards and go online, then we knock on your door in April, and nobody wants that. We don't want to do that. I don't want people coming to my house, so everybody I know just goes online and answers the census, and then we're done with it. Complete count committees. I think Lynn County COG has a complete count committee. They're trying to get off the ground, so you may be contacted by them asking if you have any insight into any of your hard-to-count populations, how to reach them. Do you know anyone who has access to a hard-to-count population that you could help them with outreach? They haven't quite got off the ground yet, but they're really earnest about it, and so they probably will be contacting you eventually. And we're hiring like crazy. Our starting wage is $17.50 an hour, and we're going to be hiring all the way through next December for various things. And we'll hire pretty much anybody at this point. I'm not supposed to say that, but that's true. So I have hiring posters, and I put some over here. If you have any 18-year-olds laying around at home that need to get up and get moving, this is a perfect opportunity. My daughter got a job with them, and she's thrilled. A lot of people work early in the morning before it gets hot, and then a lot of people work in the evenings after it cools down. It just depends on your nature. Does anyone have any questions?
So since you said you hire anyone, do you do any kind of background?
Yes, you have to be 18. You have to be able to pass a background check.
Which includes what? Do you know?
Criminal background check. Any violent felonies, we won't hire you. Are you going to apply?
Almost anyone.
You're out.
Yes. We'll hire just about anyone.
Yeah.
Pretty much anyone. Almost anyone.
Almost.
But you have to take an oath saying that you won't divulge any personal information for the rest of your life. So if you have a problem with secrets, then we probably won't hire you.
Any other questions?
Very informative.
Okay, thank you very
Okay.
much. Thanks for filling us in. I was kind
Sure.
of hearing about this and wondering what was going to happen, so that really
So,
gives us a good
my
insight.
contact information is there if you have any
Great.
questions. Let's see, don't save. Okay,
Thank you, Kristen.
thank you.
Next up, introduction. Gary?
I am very pleased to announce our new Community Development Director, Kelly Hart, back there with the blue. We are very excited to have Kelly. She is a refugee from the state of California. She tells me very proudly so, and we're very happy to have her. She has a brilliant mind, totally logical, which is what you want in a community planner, and I have enjoyed working with her, and I believe we're going to have a real strong future of leadership from Kelly with our community development. I'm so excited to have her here.
Welcome.
Welcome, Kelly.
Welcome.
Okay. With that, next up, we have an opportunity for citizens to comment on items discussed at the earlier work session or any other city business. This council welcomes all respectful comments regarding the city's business. Citizens may address the council by approaching the microphone, signing in, and stating their name and address for the record. Each citizen is provided up to 5 minutes to provide comments to the council. The council may take an additional 2 minutes to respond. The city clerk will accept and distribute written comments at a speaker's request. Is there anybody that would like to address council? Good, come on up. Kim, did we have anybody signed up?
Hi there. My name is Jasper Burton. I live at 1036 Keys Street, 97355 here in Lebanon. And I have a bit of business to discuss with you guys. So basically, I'm here representing all the dispensaries here in town. Basically, we're just coming to speak with you guys because of the fact that there's a city ordinance enacted where we're not able to operate until after 8 o'clock at night, so we have to close every evening. And we were hoping to have that ordinance changed because at this current point, we are kind of restricted in our hours, and we're looking to be able to sort of proceed forward so that we can get more hours so we can pay our employees a little more and provide a better opportunity for our customers as well.
And what hours were you thinking?
So we were hoping to, because the legal hours state that it can be open until the typical hour of like 10 o'clock. So we were hoping to open it up at least until then, and this would apply to, like I said, all the dispensaries here in town. And basically, we were hoping to just plead our case with you guys because we are definitely trying to be active, especially at our store and next door, Mr. Nice Guy and TH Clay. We're definitely trying to be active in our community. We've already started a park, Adopt a Park, so we're actually out and we're cleaning up Century Park, and so we're doing that once a month, every month, and we're looking to try and progress forward and be more active with our communities and sort of bring more awareness to proper cleanliness and just take care. I know it's a bit strange because typically with dispensaries, I know it's more of an adult thing, and we're definitely not encouraging anything else other than adult activity with marijuana consumption, of course. But that being said, we definitely would like the opportunity to as well show you that we have petition forms that we have also collected from each shop here in town. That means Mr. Nice Guy, TH Clear, La Moda, Modern Forest, pretty much all the dispensaries here. And we've collected at least 486 signatures so far. And so we were hoping to see if that might persuade the City Council, Mr. Aziz, yourself, and the City Council, if we can possibly get that taken care of.
Go ahead. I was going to say, if you could, you can give those to our clerk. She can get those for us so we can see those electronically.
Sure.
And then also what I was thinking is maybe that's something the staff could look at, come back with an evaluation of that of the times, and we could have a discussion, and that way there could be public comments on it.
Right. I'd like to know why we restricted it to 8 o'clock to begin with. So
It's
what
part
was
of
the
the original
thinking?
ordinance.
I think,
Remember?
yeah.
It was a standard Oregon, that's what I was going to say. It was, when we first started doing this, the League of Oregon Cities put together a standard time, place, and manner restrictions on the sales, and
Yeah.
that's what they came up there.
I have no problem.
But
with that.
you're not asking to open earlier than 10?
No. So that's
That makes
still, yeah,
sense.
that's be unreasonable for us to open at 7 o'clock, I believe is the allowed time. But as it stands, no, a lot of our employees would be very against that.
Like to
So
sleep
so
in
we're
today?
looking to just have a couple extra hours each day. And really, that'll also provide an opportunity for the city because we've projected that at least $500 to $700 worth of money is being lost each day, which is also going into the city's tax. So you would actually be gaining more revenue from said dispensaries being open.
I have no problem with that. And personally, I don't even need to have a staff report to tell me that we could,
I would appreciate the staff report.
Yeah, I would too.
so I'm fine with that.
Yeah, me too.
And also that gives an opportunity that we put it on as agenda item, and then the public can comment it also.
What exactly is the staff report reflecting?
What other municipalities do. That's what I would like to know.
And what the ramifications could be. I don't know.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you very
That
much.
sounds good. Thank you.
All right.
Chief, do you have anything to add on that?
No.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Okay, anyone else like to address council? Come on up.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Marty Cahill, 525 North Santiam Highway, 97355. I come before you this evening to talk about system development charges that Samaritan paid for our alcohol and drug facility and the potential of maybe getting those refunded towards the cost of the building. What I'd like to at least remind you of is the 2040 vision for the community. One of the things you recognize is a drug-free community. Comprehensive drug awareness, education, prevention, and the treatment program strive to eliminate illegal drug use. Was part of it, mental health and alternative health care, partnering with Samaritan to do that, and then reduce the pervasiveness of drug abuse in the community. I believe that this treatment center addresses all that. When we take a look at the program that we've developed and the building being built now, when you take a look at the effects of addiction, it's about a $450 billion impact on the United States. It's about a $6 billion impact to the state of Oregon, in direct and indirect costs. When we take a look at Oregon, we're ranked sixth in the country for addiction. And when we take a look at overall the access to care and treatment, we're 50th out of 50th in the country for access to care. If you take a look to your left and you take a look to your right, 2 out of 3 of you will have been affected by addiction, directly or indirectly. When we take a look at the counselors who take care of those folks with addiction, we have one counselor right now, or a caseworker, for every 100 people in treatment right now. So they have 4 times the workload of a normal caregiver providing other types of services. We currently see the data support about 1 in 6 people who complete treatment will be in treatment again in a year. What that should tell you is when we look at addiction, addiction is a chronic disease, just like diabetes, high blood pressure, cholesterol. We need to treat people. We need to have services available to treat them. They relapse. And again, having services available for them to receive when they need them is going to be very important in the treatment of those folks. When we take a look at opioid prescriptions per 1,000 residents, Lynn County produces or writes about 103 prescriptions for every 1,000 residents right now in Lynn County. And if we look at deaths per 100,000, we're just under 10 deaths per 100,000 based on opioids. It's not just opioids. Also, we've got meth. Meth has made a comeback. When we passed the laws to put Sudafed and those drugs behind the counter at the pharmacy, and you had to get a prescription. Meth production went down for a number of years, unfortunately, in Mexico. They've got super labs around the I-5 corridor, and meth has made a significant comeback. We're seeing a lot of deaths attributed to that. And if we look at the cost of care in 2003 for the country, it was about $450 million. In 2015, it's $2.2 billion for the treatment of folks addicted to meth and overdoses. One thing to remember, for every dollar spent on treatment, $7 are saved on incarceration costs, and $4 are not spent on healthcare-related issues. We don't have the police picking people up in the street, taking them to the hospital to be cleared to be put in jail. You start looking at putting people in treatment, they do better, and we have better outcomes, and we spend less money doing that. Our project is about a $4 million project. We're about $3.6 million raised. We're $400,000 short of our goal. The idea that we could potentially get some or all of our $118,000 in system development fees refunded to go towards the cost of this program would be very beneficial. And I might remind you, too, that even when this building is completely paid for, we will be providing a service that will annually lose about $250,000 a year. So we'll never make money on this. In perpetuity, that's the part that we'll bite off. We own it. We've got the program set up. But getting that $4 million to pay for the building is very important for us. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you. And just for information, that is number 5 on our agenda tonight. I don't know if you saw the agenda, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marty.
Okay, next up, anyone else like to speak to council? Cassie Cruz, set.
Cassie Cruz with the Downtown Association. I just want to give you an update of what's been going on. Lots, actually. We have been able to, with 100% yes between Grant Street and Sherman Street, we're going to incorporate all of those businesses into the Brewfest zone.
Good.
So we're not having to block off those merchants, and because a lot of people want access, they want to be able to do things, they want to be able to try a different eatery and whatnot. So it was awesome. We had 100% yes, because that's how Chris said we had to get that to make that happen, and so we're excited about doing that. The only area out of respect that we're not is on Grant Street is where we have Teen Challenge, so we can make sure people can still access that. And since they are a drug rehab, that we're not going to incorporate that. So that was awesome. And then we're also incorporating the rest of our businesses through like a passport opportunity where people can go and get a stamp and then they can get an extra token or along those lines. So I'm extraordinarily happy, and as we move Brewfest, because I like growth, I think we all do, and as we incorporate the other side, hopefully the highway someday, we can incorporate those businesses as well, especially since we have a brewery right there. And then our First Fridays have gone really well with our promotions committee really gearing up. We have new people, new blood, and as we all know, new blood is great sometimes. It brings in ideas, and it definitely has. So we have we're getting ahead in our marketing, which feels great. So a lot of great things are coming along. And then through our economic development committee, we've had Bill Fletcher and Alicia Rogers kind of just like hitting the streets and just asking people, what is your draw to downtown Lebanon? Why are you here? How is business? What can we do as an organization to help you to continue your goals in the future? And so we've gotten a lot of great feedback from that and how we can help them, and in ways of bringing classes to our merchants a lot of times, because since they are the ones operating their business from beginning to end, there's not time for them to be able to get out for that additional education. So we're finding ways, working with like LBCC Small Business Development Center, to be able to bring in webinars for them that they can access at any time, just so it gives them more of an enrichment opportunity. And so it's been a lot of great traction lately. And then one other area we kind of asked we saw for room for growth is that they want to be able to see more of a police presence downtown. To be able to have, I know we have the cards in the doors, but some people aren't getting them, but they just feel between whether it be someone going through the alleyways, just, they know someone's name, that comfortability, I guess, like it's like Domini has with a school district type of deal. I guess that's been probably the biggest feedback of growth that we could find, other than bringing more people into our downtown area. And when we've been able to incorporate and make that grow is, I don't know if some of you've seen on our Facebook page, but we had, we welcome squatchers and we welcome cyclists, because we had over almost 200 cyclists that came to Strawberry Plaza. And so our downtown did welcoming messages. They just try to create that feeling of inclusivity and friendliness that Lebanon definitely has. And then, of course, try to get the word out there of what's been going on, or not just what's going on, but why people are involved. So doing interviews and just trying to talk to people like cyclists. What brought you to Lebanon? Why do you cycle? What's important to you? And just kind of get that information out there to hopefully ignite passions within people, maybe to give them a different kind of a preview to life, even like maybe squatchers, and find out what the drive is there. So it's been fun to see kind of the growth and inclusivity that's been created, and I think that's really all I have, unless there's any questions that I can answer if you guys have anything. Otherwise, I'm out. Thank you
very much. It's been exciting to see a downtown during the summer. It's been so busy down there. It's great.
Oh, yeah, and the quirky turkey, too, has just had given the huge draw to that. And actually, I don't think it ended up hitting the news, because I was trying to find it, but we had Randy Joss with KZI, who approached me at a greeter saying, tell me what's going on with the turkeys. And but I didn't see anything, so maybe they might run that later, so hopefully.
Thank you, Cassie.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to address council?
Bonnie's going to sign in for us.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor Aziz and city councilors. Thank you for the opportunity to address you this evening. I'm Jim Patterson. I'm the Executive Vice President, Chief Communications and Experience Officer for Oregon State Credit Union. Our address is 4800 Southwest Research Way, Corvallis 97339. Having been a former elected city councilor and city manager, I respect your service to the city and recognize the difficult decisions that you oftentimes must make. Thank you for your public service. With me this evening is Bonnie Humphrey Anderson. She's our Chief Financial Officer. I want to make sure you know Oregon State Credit Union is very proud to be a part of Lebanon. Excuse me. We're here this evening to share with you a very unique story. We've been marketing a property for sale that we own directly adjacent to the credit union branch here in Lebanon, right off of Highway 20. The property's been marketed for sale for 9 years. Recently, a buyer approached us to purchase the 1.45-acre parcel with plans to build a medical office/urgent care facility. On the afternoon of July 30th, while completing work on our purchase-sale agreement to return to our buyer, we were notified by our commercial realtor that the property we're selling is in the city's newly designated development-free zone. We also learned that as a result of this designation, any new connections to the city's sanitary sewer system would not be allowed until further notice. On July 31st, I reached out to City Manager Gary Marks to share our story and to learn more about the development-free zone. I want to thank Gary for his willingness to share information about the challenges the city's infrastructure has during significant wet weather events and for engaging in a very constructive conversation about how we might proceed. As a result of that conversation, we were both in agreement that sharing our story tonight with you might be a good idea. Needless to say, the creation of the development-free zone came as a surprise to us. With the purchase-sale agreement completed, we had to do the right thing and disclose to our buyer the situation we find ourselves in regarding the property and the new development restriction. We have made the disclosure to our buyer and mutually agreed to wait and see what the next steps might be. What we do know, after speaking with Engineering Services Director Ron Whitlatch, the earliest new development restrictions might be lifted and new connections could be made to the sanitary sewer system if all goes well for the city. That would be around May of 2020. Now, obviously, our concern is between now and then we may lose this sale, and we may not have any interest from buyers in the property in the foreseeable future. It is our understanding that the development of the parcel in question for the intended use by our purchaser would have no impact on your existing capacity issues during dry months and little to no additional impact to existing capacity issues during the wet months. We understand the position city staff is taking in dealing with this matter and property owners, and the importance to make certain that everyone is treated fairly and consistently as a result of the creation of this development-free zone. While we understand the uniformed approach that you're taking to new development restrictions and applications and new connections to your sanitary sewer system, we hope that in sharing our story tonight with you, we've brought to light the impact that that decision has on Oregon State Credit Union today and on other property owners in the development-free zone and their ability to sell their property for redevelopment now and in the future. We do thank you for your time. If the council wishes, we'd be happy to answer any questions, and I do have written comments that I can provide to the city recorder.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Any questions? Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor.
Is there anyone else that would like to address council?
Well, my name is Bill Flesher. I live at 32528 Ritchie Ranch Lane in Lebanon. Kind of following on the same footsteps as our predecessor here, I'm got asked to present this about an hour ago, so it's not quite as polished. I'm representing a client that's the Farm Worker Housing Development Corporation. They've been under contract on a 9+ acre piece just adjacent to Walmart for about a year now. It's an affordable housing project. When it all in, actually the fully funded price tag is going to be close to $10 million with the first phase of 24 units with about 84 to 86 units total for this is affordable housing that will be constructed on that piece next to Walmart there. It's scheduled. It's fully funded. It's scheduled to begin 2020. Again, this is the same problem that we have with the moratorium. I know that Ron Whitlatch would be able to explain more of what we have there, but this has been something they've been working on for quite a bit of time. They've got over $480,000 in their research and reports already to determine the property's feasibility and getting their funding in place. So what we're asking is the city is to consider that connection and that operation again for the sewer on that. Again, it's not it's in the old system, wouldn't be represented in the new piece. So maybe Ron can add more to that for you.
Questions?
So
Bill,
that's
the question. Did I read or hear that facility is going to be focused on housing for veterans?
not veterans. I think it's farm workers, so it's a lower affordable housing is what it is.
That's a different
You're
one.
thinking of a
Wayne.
different place,
Yeah.
Wayne.
Yeah, there's a different.
Yeah.
There's another project that's for veterans.
Any other questions? Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to address council? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to the public hearings. Let's see. I will be presiding over tonight's public hearing of the City Council. Purpose of this hearing is to invite the public testimony regarding the proposed city fees, and the public hearing is now open at 6:44 p.m. City Manager will give report. Will provide his staff report.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, the city staff annually reviews our chart of fees to make sure that we're staying current with what it costs to provide service. We've done that once again this year, and in the staff report you'll see that we have fee changes in the following areas of city government: the city clerk's office, business licenses, some other miscellaneous permits, community development and park fees, engineering, park fees, police and water sewer special service fees. So each member of the staff who is involved with each of these areas is here tonight, and there's a chart of the actual changes in the packet for you to review. If you have specific questions about any of the fees in question, I would ask for the appropriate staff member or department director to come forward and address your question. If you have any questions for me, I'll be happy to respond.
With regard to most of these fees...
Wait, hold on. It's a public hearing, so we have to go into anybody who wants to speak in this matter first. So is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of this matter? Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition? Okay, with that, the public hearing is now closed at 6:46 p.m. And now it'll be council discussion and limited just to city council.
Thank you.
Yes.
Just in regards to the fees, I'm assuming that the increases were based on actual work-related expense of the employees doing the work, and that's why the adjustment's made. For instance,
Yes.
we're not arbitrarily increasing fees, but it's based on the amount of
Correct.
time and man hours or person hours that it takes to perform.
Yes, each department has reviewed and suggested the changes that you see for those reasons that you list.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll have the city attorney read.
Just one comment, I guess, in terms of the amount of them. They seem to be, if my memory serves me correctly, there's more of them this time than previously.
It varies from year to year. You're right, I think in the last couple of years, we've not had many changes.
Right.
Eventually, they have to be changed just because the cost of doing business goes up. So this year, I think we happen to have a little bit longer list.
Okay. Thank you, Gary.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll have the city attorney please read the title of the resolution.
Resolution number 2019-22, a resolution amending fees and charges for city services and repealing Exhibit A fee schedule of resolution number 2018-28.
Entertain a motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve resolution 2019-22. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, the resolution passes. Thank you, Gary. Okay, number 2, the appeal of Planning Commission decision file 1905-35. I'm going to turn that over to Trey tonight.
Yeah, we would invite, Kelly's coming up, and we'd also invite the applicant to come up, please. So this has been the subject of some discussion over the last couple of days, and the result is that the applicant is going to ask the City Council to remand the appeal back to the Planning Commission. And the reason being is I think they have some, and I'll give you an opportunity just to kind of confirm and just say that generally why you're asking for the remand. And the reason I'm doing this is I'm trying to be careful because if we don't open the public hearing, technically anything that's said would be an ex parte contact. So I'm trying to limit what we talk about today because it's actually not going to open the public hearing. But the main point is that the applicant has asked for it to be remanded back to the Planning Commission, at which point there'll be a new notice provision and another hearing at the Planning Commission. And that decision then would also be subject to an appeal coming back up to the court, up to this body. So we've got the applicant. I'm sorry, state your name.
My name is Matt Johnson. I'm with Studio 3 Architecture.
Okay, and they've asked for it to be remanded, and they've also agreed to waive the 120-day rule, which would otherwise be in effect. The 120-day rule is the city has 120 days to have a final decision once an application is submitted, but the applicant can waive that.
That's correct. Yeah.
So, and I know you guys kind of want to explain why, and I'm going to be the bad guy here and say, listen, I'd really prefer if you just confirm that we're remanding it back to the Planning Commission, and, if it comes back here, it comes back here. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But we're just going to kind of start the process over with the Planning Commission based on, I think, some recommendations that you've made that you're happy about. You can say something. I'll stop you if you get in trouble.
Sure. Yeah, that's correct. I mean, obviously, we heard the comments from the community at the Planning Commission hearing in June. And so we've worked hard. I think part of it, of Kelly coming on board, we were kind of late in the game in receiving the appeal. So we kind of hastily worked with ourselves, the owner, and the civil engineer to come up with a layout for the site that we think works better from a use and architectural standpoint, but also I think eases a lot of the concerns of the community. And so the most appropriate action was to request a remand where we will stay under the same file and same application, but take it back to the Planning Commission for review, similar to what we did in June, and kind of start from scratch a bit.
Okay.
So process will simply be that Kelly, I think, will prepare a notice of remand, and then it's back at the Planning Commission.
Okay.
Do we need to vote on that?
Yeah, I think you should have a vote approving the remand.
Okay.
Just a motion is fine.
Okay. I'll take a motion to approve the remand.
Move to approve the remand.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the remand back to the Planning Commission. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you very much for coming. Number 3, food pod truck regulations. Kelly Hart. Welcome.
Why, thank you.
Pardon? No. No, I'm sorry, not at this time.
We'll be happy to talk to you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Well, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
So before you tonight is a presentation, but also a discussion on food pods in the city of Lebanon, and to what extent and whether we want to permit them and the types of regulations that would occur. So this is a discussion item, so I welcome any interjections through my conversations with you all. To get the feedback. The purpose and the general agenda of what we're going to follow through is give you some background of how we currently regulate food trucks in the city, and the way that works, and then the different possible levels of operation or permitting process for food pods, which is more than one truck. And then finally kind of go over the next steps and get your feedback on sort of the goals of where we want to be in terms of how these types of operations should look in the city. So, currently food trucks are permitted within any commercial district within the city, and they're subject to a temporary use permit application. So this is generally just an over-the-counter application. It comes in, we verify the locations within the commercial zone, and go forth and start operating a food truck. There's very little evaluation of the site. There's no regulations or requirements in terms of the level of improvement needed for the site at this point in time. And there's no utility connections allowed for these food trucks either, except for electrical connections alone. Also, the permit is only valid for a period of 6 months, at which point in time the food truck operator would need to come back into the city and apply for a whole new permit. The flip side is there's no limitation on the number of times that we could issue a temporary permit, which also means that it's kind of can turn into not a temporary use but more of a permanent operation at that location. So at this point in time, all temporary use applications have been associated with just one food truck operation on a site.
Kelly?
Yes.
Excuse me. Am I mistaken on what we have now? Don't they have to have permission or show permission from the owner of the property?
Yes.
Okay, so that is one of the conditions.
That is, yes.
Okay, I thought so. I just wanted to make sure.
They do need to have right to operate there. We can't just let them show up on City Hall's parking lot and all of a sudden start operating. They do need to have the permission. But that's pretty much it. In terms of actual city regulations, there's very little, if any. And so, as I was saying, all temporary use applications have been associated with just one truck on one site, and all locations have mostly already been within an improved property, so on an existing parking lot or within an existing shopping center. Currently in the city, there's 4 active permits for these temporary use permits for food trucks, and all but one are located on an improved site or what's considered an improved site. There's the coffee truck that's on North Santiam Way by Olive Street. That is on just a gravel lot with no further improvements for that site. So as it stands right now, if somebody wanted to come into the city and all of a sudden operate 20 food trucks on a single property, the path would be for each of those food trucks to obtain a temporary use permit for that single property, and that's the extent of what we would regulate or permit. We haven't set up a system that would put in any sort of standards of operation or separation from the food trucks themselves or seating areas or any of those types of things to make it more of a place for somebody to be and congregate and eat as part of what a traditional food pod would look like. So, based on the fact that we have received 2 interested parties coming to the city to operate food pods, one of them is located off of Park and Sherman, and the other one is literally right across the street here on 3rd and Sherman. And so since there's an obvious interest that's been identified, we wanted to bring this forward to the City Council to sort of get your feedback on, is the system that we're operating under good as it stands? And if so, we'll go forth and be merry, or do we want to set forth a permitting procedure and some minimum standards of operation for these food truck pods? And so again, one key distinction that I want to make sure that we have is the proposal would be twofold. We have the definition of a food truck, which is just a singular truck operating on property, versus a food pod, which is more than one truck operating on a property. By creating this separation and this distinction, those that are already currently operating would be able to continue to operate under the existing permitting procedures, but the point is to regulate or suggest standards for the larger congregation of food trucks. So we have done some research and separated this up into, if I can learn how to use this computer, let's try it. There we go. We separated the operations of food pods in general into kind of 3 basic levels. And so you'll see this slide multiple times through the presentation just to sort of continue to show the difference. But you've got a basic level, which is what you would normally see when you first saw food pods pop up in downtown Portland, where it's everybody's tied right next to each other, and you actually have like the transactions occurring on city streets. And that would be basically no regulations, kind of sit where we are and let the market demand just sort of regulate how it sits. The mid-level would be, well, we don't want to necessarily see that, but some level of improvement to the property, some level of ability for people to sit around and stay for a little while and eat their food on the property. And then there's what we call the Cadillac of food pods, which is actually to do almost some permanent site improvements, provide facilities, provide enclosures for inclement weather and restrooms and all of the full facilities on site. So this is where I definitely am going to start asking you guys for some input, is we're going to start showing you some pictures of each of these different base models, and then wanting some indication of what you like, what you don't like, and whether or not you want to completely nix one idea and go with another. So.
Oh, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So this basic, so the direct sales on public right-of-way, so they could be in a parking slot on Main Street?
So it wouldn't necessarily be that they can be on the public right-of-way, parked on the public right-of-way, but they can be on a parking lot and facing their window to the sidewalk, and then the patron would be standing on the sidewalk and accepting the food from the truck that's on a private property. And so this creates that interaction of public-private space. It creates, is there enough sidewalk area to allow for that transaction to occur while still maintaining ADA access on the public sidewalk, trash and refuse on the public sidewalk atmosphere. Or if you want to still go with the basic model, you can still say we don't want to have any regulations, but all transactions would have to occur on private property, which means they would just reorient the truck so the transaction occurs on private property. But The basic model is what you'll see in the next picture is how that interaction on the public street occurs.
Thank you.
So, let's see. Let me just do this the easy way. There we go. So this is kind of some general pictures of what you'd see. These are pictures from downtown Portland. And obviously it's the transaction right on the property. There's no improvements required to the subject property. There's no seating requirements. There's no requirements for restrooms. There's no utility hookups. It's basically the requirement is the truck needs to be able to pick up and go within a short period of time, and you can come and go or sit there as long as you want as well. So this is basic model, and the basic model does leave it up to the market to decide how they want to operate. That doesn't mean that the food truck pods will operate in this manner, but it means that if we don't set standards, then they could operate in this manner. So that's basic model number one. Any questions, concerns, comments, issues?
Kelly, a question. This wouldn't preclude, picking up on what you just said, this wouldn't preclude from a developer wanting to do your Cadillac version within this model.
Correct. So this model is basically saying we're going to remain status quo as we stand in terms of regulations as they exist today, which is basically nothing. But maybe develop a permit that ends up being easier for the food truck operator, so it's not an every 6-month permitting requirement, but maybe it turns into an annual one or something like that. But this one leaves it just straight up market driven. You can come in and do whatever you would like on a property. Okay. So moving on from the basic model, we have the mid-level model. This would provide some level of atmosphere to the property and provide some level of your customers to actually consume the food on the property once they've purchased it. And it's not too much above the basic model, but we would require for area to be provided for seating. Not necessarily that you must provide seating, but within the site you must provide an area to let that occur. Some level of site improvement in terms of providing asphalt or greenery or concrete or even crushed gravel to where it's a compacted solid surface for people to operate on. And what we've seen other cities do is they need to provide a restroom facility either on site or have an agreement with other businesses nearby that would allow their customers to go into the businesses to use those restrooms. This is usually tied to if you provide seating, then you must also provide restroom areas. And so this would kind of be we'd build into the regulations, you must provide the opportunity to provide seating, but only if you provide seating, then do you have to have restroom facilities. So some examples of what this looks like. These are also pulled from local areas. The one on the bottom right is actually on Alberta Street in Portland. I've been to this one, so it's easy for me to pick it out. It has outdoor seating areas. It has a fire pit in the middle of it. It has a place for people to sit and stay for a while, some placemaking, and they have an agreement to use the restroom from 2 doors down, basically. As you can look at it, within this model itself, there can be a great level of variation of what level of improvements provided. The top left, it definitely looks like it's more of an improved site. It has electricity for outdoor lighting for people to be there at night. It has full benches. It has landscaping to soften the area and really make it a placemaker. Whereas on the other pictures, it's internal. All of the transaction occurs on site. There are seating areas that are available on the top right. They actually have a cover for when it's raining. But then in other areas, it's just more of an organic seating area, how they see fit. So at least in this area, it's providing the opportunity for place. It's providing the opportunity for patrons to be on sites and providing the facilities necessary for that. We would also require, because you're allowing patrons to be on site, appropriate fire access, appropriate ADA access, all of those things that come with having people using the site.
Do you, and excuse my ignorance because I don't go to Portland, I know Jason will know, but when you go to these pods like this, is it 365 or is it just mainly summer, nice weather, or do they actually have it all the time?
It's
All year round?
365 all year
Okay.
round. Yeah. I've been to the one in Alberta in the middle of December, and it was operating, and they had, at that point in time, they put up like,
Some cover.
I don't know, a wedding tent sort of thing where it's fully enclosed, and they'll have a little heater in there, which I'm not sure if it meets fire code requirements, but hey, you don't work in Portland, so it's all right.
Don't mark them out.
But they tend to organically change it based off of the weather itself. So this would be the basic level. We wouldn't be over-regulating it. We would just sort of be making sure that you provide some opportunity for enjoyment of your patrons rather than just pick up and go, and then where do you put the trash, and where do you go and eat it and all that kind of stuff. So this provides at least that bare minimum. And then next up is our Cadillac. We call it this because it's full service. It's an entire building is built or a canopy structure of some point where it can be enclosed for inclement weather, and you have full restrooms, and sometimes you also have food service within that area. There's actually 3 examples of this within the general area. There's the barn at Hickory Station in Albany. There's the Yard Food Park in Salem, and then BG Food Cartel in Beaverton. Out of the 3 of these, the one in Beaverton is the largest and the most impressive in terms of the improvements that they've done. But this is truly the food carts and the food trucks end up being almost a semi-permanent fixture as part of it. They'll wrap their tires so that it looks cleaner, it looks nicer, it looks more like a carnival stand sort of thing. And so they make it more aesthetically pleasing looking. They provide more outdoor seating areas. They usually, associated with some of these, provide for entertainment as part of it. But in terms of regulation, it would be requirement for seating, requirement for restrooms, requirements for canopy covers and for full structures to be able to be operating 360 with full improved structures that are approved by the fire department and the building department and all that kind of stuff. And so we included as part of this conversation so that you can see what it would look like, where it definitely looks more like a permanent facility rather than kind of the intention and the original appearance and operation of a food truck pod. But the pictures on the left are the ones from Beaverton, as you can see on the site plan that's kind of the rendering site plan. They have lots of different seating areas. They have lots of areas that can be manipulated and moved around. And it's a pretty substantial area that also has a very large building associated with it. The one on the right is from Salem. That's the Yard. And if you look, the picture's kind of dark, but if you look at it towards the roll-up doors, you can see the food trucks just outside of that. And so that's the 3 different levels. 1 is let the market do everything they want to do. 2 is provide some sort of atmosphere for your customers. 3 is make it a permanent fixture within the city, I think is the best way that I can orient it in terms of the levels that you would be creating.
Kelly, is the Yard the one on Commercial Street in Salem?
Yeah, that would be it.
I've been there a number of times. It don't seem like a Cadillac to me, but
Cadillac in terms of the facilities that they provide. Like the food, but we can't control that.
Compared to a food truck out in somebody's parking lot.
Exactly.
Is there a possibility if you kept with basic but had regulations like trash and just certain things that had to be like maybe an in-betweeny of basic and mid-level?
Sure. I think in reviewing all of the different food pod regulations from the different cities, the big things are utility connections, access, and trash. And so if we just wanted to truly leave it up to the market, but at least make sure that we weren't creating a nuisance, those would be the 3 things that we would focus on.
I kind of like the second plan and third. The first one just seems like crazy. It just seems crazy. No regulations, no fire codes. There's fire codes, but there's nothing specific called out in it. And to me, it seems like that second one is where we can then define some of the things that we want to see, because I would like to see, I don't want to see it in a dirt lot with people walking through it and can't get in, it's not accessible, trash, things like that. So I think 2 and 3 to me seem like it would be 2, and then if someone wanted to do a 3, that would be a total option to them.
I'm not a fan of the government dictating how a business will run. I think if a food cart pod did a number 2 or number 3, they're more likely to be successful, but that's not our position to dictate that.
The government does plenty of regulating on how businesses run, but there's some inherent issues with the basic that if you're familiar with cart pod operations, you're going to see some real problems pick up. And I think the site improvement or lack thereof is the number one big problem. These carts use fuel, they use water, which means they need to fill fuel, they need to somehow dump water and get fresh water. And what that typically means is if there's no on-site connections, then they're physically leaving the site and coming back. Imagine this grass lot out here, which is the proposed site right here. Imagine trailers in the wintertime being pulled in and out of that lot, and what it would create as far as the condition of that lot for our pedestrians, the condition of that lot being drug out onto the roadway, the dirt, the sod, all that. It creates some issues. Without services or connections, there may be a propensity to pull the handle and dump the tank at night right there on the lot, and there's your wastewater on site. So things like trash and vector control becomes an issue, rodents, critters. So there are a lot of things to consider, and I mean, I'm not for overregulation either, but I'm for responsible regulation that's going to create a more aesthetically pleasing and maybe a more efficient and productive commercial zone or food zone for our citizens and our visitors.
Safe.
Yeah, I'm with you on public
yeah.
health and safety. If we're going to come up with regulations and there's an argument for public health and safety, anything else that is aesthetic or something like we'd really like to see an enclosed building. Well, who wouldn't? But that that kind of thing for me, I think we overstep our bounds.
That's if someone wants to come put up an enclosed building.
Right.
Would we approve that? And we require aesthetics when a business goes in anyway. We have landscape requirements. You got to put in X number of trees, X number of parking spaces. You have to have proper drainage for your site. I mean, there's a number of.
And not all of that is aesthetic.
But trees and.
What about handicapped access on across the street here? They're just going to do
that's public health and safety. I'm saying you could make if you can make it. I'm on board with anything public health and safety and access.
I think looking at this list that she has up here, I think all of those pieces need to be addressed. I mean, and those all come for me out of the number 2 option.
So without restrooms, no go.
Yeah, see, for me,
Yeah,
I
they should have
just feel so
restrooms.
bad that they have to require restrooms and seating. I just think of when I was just in Germany, they have not the basic level, but they have all the different food carts, pods, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
You just go up and you eat, but they had a spot where you're taking care of it, the garbage and whatnot. So I guess where I get stuck up on the mid-level, and I'm totally, because you know me, I'm anal, yeah, I'm clean and orderly, but I'm not okay with the basic level, but where I'm getting caught up with is the requirement that they have to have seating, and then with that, with restrooms.
So I think, sorry.
I'm sorry, what you had said was that it's something that if they wanted to have seating, then they've got to have the bathrooms.
Right.
And that's something that we could write into the second one. It's still not the first one. We still have all the health and safety concerns. But, if they don't want to put seating in there, then we shouldn't
If
force
it's a
them to.
walk-up kind of window, come up, get it, and go,
Right.
then
Okay.
you're not expected to stay. There's no need for a restroom.
So I think the main difference between the basic level and the mid-level is the opportunity for people to be on the site. So we wouldn't necessarily require seating to be placed on the site and for the improvement to be made, but within the site itself, you should have an area where if somebody wants to buy a hamburger, they should be able to eat that hamburger within the site without having to leave. And so if it's you have 6 food trucks and you must include a 10 by 10 area for people to stand in and be, then that's fine. And then if they go the next step of providing seating, then they would have to have restroom facilities within a general area or provide restroom facilities on site. We pulled that from other cities that have created regulations, because if they're going to be on there for any period of time, then you need to provide the facilities for them to use within that period of time.
I think it's important to point out, too, that we're not requiring the truck to provide a bathroom.
No.
So what this is going to be is a private property owner is going to lease space for profit to food trucks, and then that property owner would be the one responsible as part of their economic venture business, creating a public space on their property to provide that restroom. So they would, that restroom would be covered by the lease costs of the truck. So everyone pays $20 a month that goes towards the honey pot. So personally, I think at least some sort of site improvement needs to be there. Otherwise, we're going to have these dusty, muddy, dirty, gross, to me, areas for food sales. It would be akin to grabbing your corn dog at the Strawberry Festival, and while that's fun for the Strawberry Festival, heck, even the Strawberry Festival is done on gravel. So in the wintertime, and it's not conducive to cleanliness and to me, not conducive to what we would want in that commercial zone, in that downtown area.
This space here is going to get muddy.
In a hurry, especially when they start pulling in and out in the wintertime.
Yeah.
Because how do you pull a trailer out? You have to bring a truck in to do it. And, you know.
I've been to the Salem one many times, in summer and winter. And they have picnic tables for seating in the summertime. In the wintertime, they bring in 10 by 10 pop-ups each.
I think you're thinking of a different place in Salem. This is an actual permanent structure, the one in Salem. It's about twice the size of this travel station.
This one is the one in Salem,
and it's this, that one there. So it's a permanent structure. It's fire sprinklered. It has electricity. It's got a bar inside. It's a really nice facility. But you're probably thinking of a different, more of a Portlandy style pod.
Well, I go to the one on Commercial Street.
This is off Commercial. It's like a block off on. I can't remember the name of the street, but
I'm still learning the streets around here, so forgive me if I'm wrong.
But they bring in, at least in the wintertime when it's raining, in the fall, they have pop-up tents they put over the tables.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think in the middle level and on the basic level, bringing in those pop-up tents would be acceptable. If they get to a certain size, then the fire department does need to review it and make sure that there's appropriate access in and out of it. But other than that, they're allowed to do that as well.
Securing those, would there be some sort of regulation on securing those?
In the building department as well, there would be regulations for that. I think the only level of this, and you know, it's fluid, right? So if you see parts of what you would want out of the Cadillac in the other versions, well, we can pull that into the other versions. But I think if you want clear delineation in the Cadillac version, we would expect a permanent structure to be constructed. That gives you the aesthetics, that gives you the permanency, that gives you the improvement to the sites to make it a permanent site. The other ones are much more available to modification during winter versus summer, seating versus not seating. It's just whether or not you want to require them to provide an opportunity for that on the site, whether or not you want to require a minimum site improvements to make sure that you don't have mud and dirt tracking off of the road. That would be kind of the big difference between the basic model and the mid-step level.
Is there regulations, let's say in Portland, do they have vendors that are in the pod area that sell, let's say, trinkets or other things other than food?
I'm sure that you could. It just requires the appropriate permit through the city. I don't know if we would necessarily limit it to food service as part of a food pod. That gets into a situation of why regulate something and just let the market take care of it unless you want to make it just pure food service. But that would just simply require an appropriate permit. The basic model, I think I would also be concerned, one thing that we haven't talked about is alcohol service. In the basic model, there's no regulations, and so the thing that would be regulating the alcohol service is the OLCC. And I think in any model, we would build that into it as well, but if you wanted to have a certain ability to say you must have alcohol sales in a certain area, or in terms of the number of trucks on a site that can sell alcohol at a time or something like that, to limit the alcohol sales, if you want to do something like that, that would be included as part of some level of regulation versus nothing.
So how would that work if, say, the growler wanted to have a spot there in the pod?
Mm-hmm.
They would have to get an OLCC permit for that property, and it would have to have a control zone that would be monitored. And the carts, the pods in Portland that sell alcohol are their own established control zone, so they're fenced. There's a cart that sells alcohol that you walk up to, your ID is checked, and you have to stay inside the fenced area. How they police that, I don't know, but most people want to stay inside because they go get their beer and then they go get their food. So,
right.
But that entire area where the seating is would have to be declared as a control zone through the OLCC, and that application has to be submitted by somebody, not at will. Someone has to be responsible for that, right?
Right.
What about requiring health inspections along with our permit? So how do we know that this cart is taking proper precautions to protect the public from foodborne illness and things of that nature? Is that something we could say you need to show proof of a...
The county does that.
Right.
The county, I don't know if they regulate these.
From my understanding is that they need to have a health department permit. In our research, every single county food pod ordinance that I've read to has gone back to the health department for the state, I think. A health department?
County, yeah.
Yeah. And so there is a regulation associated with that. There is no problem in a licensing process, though, to specifically say you must
documentation.
have documentation and proof of a county health permit. And
our county has shut one down before, have they not?
There was one temporary one here in town, the barbecue place that got shut down years ago.
Yeah.
But that was complaint driven.
Between you and the county health, most all the events in the park, Cheadle Park, have county health, they come out and inspect.
Right. I would just like to see that as a condition of our application. You just show proof that you've had your annual inspection. I believe it's an annual, but whatever the frequency is, I'd like to see that documented as part of the application and confirmed. Mm-hmm. Something else I'd like to see us get on the front, on the cutting edge rather than the bleeding edge, is that, and you and I discussed this, but Oregon Fire Code is going to address food cart pods this year, most likely by the end of the year. And I think, too, we need to get ahead of the curve on that and require that carts that have production of grease-laden vapors, which is the definition in Fire Code, which requires a hood suppression system and then a cleaning and an inspection, testing, and maintenance schedule for both of those systems. I think we should require that. The danger, of course, is that you've got a person inside of a metal box over a fryer. If that fryer becomes engulfed, there's only one way in and out of those carts, and they're typically trapped inside the box. It would be a real black eye on our city food cart pod to burn one up or blow one up. So there's a number of regulations coming, and I can provide some guidance on that. But when it does happen, everyone will be subject. But I think Lebanon should get ahead of the game and just require some of these things that I know are going to be part of that code now.
Write that in and saying is the fire department requirements.
It would also require an inspection from us, just like, because fire code, Oregon State Fire Marshal is going to treat these pods or these carts now as a brick and mortar restaurant.
Right, yeah.
Same regulations. They're going to have spacing requirements. Whether that's 5 feet or 8 feet or 10 feet right now remains to be decided, but there will be spacing requirements. There will be the same testing requirements and suppression requirements that restaurants have now. And that requires us to track that as a fire district. So we would need to be brought in a loop in the permitting process so we knew it was there, we could perform an inspection, and then we get them on our maintenance schedule. So I'd like to see us get ahead of the curve on that.
Okay.
I like to see us ditch the basic idea.
I agree.
I don't think that's where our future is.
I'm alone, so so ditch the basic.
Basic.
And then, I think the ADA and some sort of site improvement or site minimums would be good, and maybe we work with, I don't know how, maybe you go investigate a little more on that now and come back with some better options, but.
So if I can summarize what I think I've heard and tell me if I'm wrong, definitely don't regulate to Cadillac level. Definitely don't do the basic level. But in terms of the mid-level, we still want to keep it minimal in terms of the regulations, but make sure that you're maintaining public health, safety, and welfare, and that we are not creating a public nuisance issue in terms of trash and debris and mud and dirt and general disrepair for when it turns into the winter months and all that kind of stuff. So some sort of site paving or gravel at some level. Is there anything else I'm missing?
Question on that. Would that apply to single trucks as
Yes,
well
that was
as
my
multiples, or would it be just for the multiples and a single truck could park in the grass?
So we are talking about food pod ordinance regulations, which, as we define food pods, it's more than one truck.
Okay.
I could receive direction from you all that you want to modify the temporary use permit regulations as well to say it must be on an improved site. But it's two separate. So food pods, keep it as you must have an improved site. For a singular truck, would you guys want us to modify the temporary use permit to require it to be on an improved site as well?
I think now's a good time to do that because all of our food carts currently are on improved sites. Even the one that's gravel would be considered an improved surface.
Right.
Suitable for that. So I would think that would be a good.
We should throw that in.
The only thing I have a little bit of concern is, we have a spot in town, for example, where two food pods parked next to each other. So they would not be able then to do that without being considered, or two food carts parked next to each other. That would be a pod then.
But they're on an improved site. You're talking about Mega Foods or Rife's parking lot? Yeah, so they're on an improved site.
Yeah, they are.
More
but
than
then,
one becomes how many is a pod?
Two.
Yeah.
Two's a pod.
Yeah.
So that becomes a pod.
Bathrooms and.
But they don't have. Do they provide seating?
No.
So
then they wouldn't be
then they
subject
wouldn't need
to
the bathrooms.
restrooms.
Oh.
It's
that's
walk
right.
up. It's take away. They don't.
That
need
was
the
my
bathroom.
concern as well.
Okay.
And if they,
Yeah. Okay. Then
So they have an out. They have an option.
The biggest thing is they're
you
not
provide
parked in the
seating.
grass field.
Yeah,
That's
you
the
provide
big thing.
seating though. You do increase your ability to sell more food. It's easier to bring the family down and there's seating available for you and your kids versus having to go pick up 6 different meals and drive them home to eat or whatever. Drive to a park. You can dump it there and eat it. So there's incentive to put the seating in and the bathrooms, but if they don't want to, they don't have to.
I think the way that it's been discussed is the regulations would be drafted in a way where it's fluid enough to where even the mid-level model is minimal improvements for a 2 or 3 pod area. But when you get to a larger food pod, there's going to be just regular incentives from the market for them to do a greater level of improvements. But we're just setting the minimum standards to say you need to provide appropriate site access, you need to provide appropriate ADA access and trash and all the things that we currently don't regulate and just hope that they're good stewards, basically.
So not to add to your list, but I do think there's value in, if these are successful, these small pods on semi-improved lots, it's only a matter of time before someone takes the Hickory Barn model or the yard model and says, I'm going to buy a piece of land, I want to build that.
Right.
We need to be prepared to have a plan for that. And so I think there should be a Cadillac plan, but the minimum requirements would be the mid-range, because are we going to require sewer hookups? Are we going to require individual meters or 1 meter? All that stuff needs to get addressed because someone's going to do it.
Yeah.
And bathrooms, I'm assuming, can be porta potties, correct?
So our code, from my understanding, currently stands that porta potties are not permitted. But as a caveat, as part of this particular ordinance, we can have an exception and a carve-out for this type of a use to allow for porta potties. I would hope that we can do something more than the construction-style porta potty and maybe have more of a unit that is inclusive of hand washing stations and that kind of thing. But we would be okay with doing something like that, I would imagine.
Jason, of the trucks that say are local that or all of them have fire suppression hoods?
No.
That's spendy.
It is spendy, but so is a new trailer.
And I've seen a couple blow up recently. Portland.
Yeah. Portland's had a number of incidents, at least 3. Eugene's had an explosion.
Oh, did they?
Completely blew a truck to pieces in a parking lot. I mean, it was gone. So there have been a number of incidents, and that's why the state's getting around the corner on this.
When we have those at something at like Cheadle Park and stuff, are they inspected? Are they regularly inspected?
They are now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you need any more, or does that
I
help?
think I have enough direction on my side.
That was great info. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Very well prepared. Appreciate it.
Can we recess?
Yes, absolutely. We'll take a 10-minute recess. Meeting to order, please.
Well, I have stuff to do, so no time loss.
Call the meeting to order.
Right.
How about Wayne? Why don't you yell at Wayne?
And Trey. Okay, next up, number 4, adopting reasonable measures for public records requests. Kim Schaefer.
Thank you. In 2017, a Senate bill was signed, and it just changes the way that cities handle public records requests. And these became effective in January 2018. So this policy is just to make sure we're compliant with current law. Current law requires that cities acknowledge records requests within 5 days, and that they are completed no less than 10 days after they were acknowledged. Another changes include a 60-day time limit for failure to pay for records or respond to records for clarification. Because right now, if you ask someone, try to get clarification and they don't respond, it's still an open public records request. So this helps the cities out a little. Another change is it creates 3 levels of records requests. The first is if you have a form electronically, it's something easy. They don't need to fill out a form. You can just email it to them. It frees up staff time. A lot of times you spend more time emailing forms back and forth. The other 2 levels, they're a little more involved, and they oftentimes require a fee. So that's it.
Okay, questions? Seeing none, I'll have the city attorney read the resolution, please.
Resolution number 2019-23, a resolution adopting reasonable measures for public records requests.
Move for approval?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve resolution 2019-23. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The resolution is passed. Thank you, Kim. And number 5, North Gateway Urban Renewal Meeting, Samaritan Drug Addiction and Alcohol Treatment Center Building Permit Fee Reimbursement. And I'll have Ron Whitlatch come up and present that. Oh, we have to adjourn the meeting and open up as the North Gateway Urban Renewal Meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council. So back in June, when we went through the budget adoption process, one of the requests during that process was for staff to bring back a proposal to pay for the SDC fees and the building fees associated with the Samaritan Drug Rehabilitation Center. That money was shifted out of, I believe it was in a deferred fund in the URD, and now it's into a fund that can be spent. What we've got before you is a proposal to amend the existing economic development agreement with Samaritan by a resolution that's attached. The only difference here, normally what we would do in the economic development agreement as it's written, we would normally pay the SDC cost up front. The URD would reimburse the SDCs. In this case, the SDCs have been paid, and the URD would then basically pay Samaritan back the $116,424 for those fees. So attached is a resolution which amends the existing economic development agreement with Samaritan, and if council so chooses, they could do that. Are there any questions?
No.
Okay.
Thank you, Ron.
Okay.
Okay, have the city attorney read the resolution, please.
Resolution number 2019-24, resolution to amend the economic development agreement between Samaritan Health Services and the City of Lebanon to include the treatment and recovery services building located at 111 North Main Street.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve Resolution 2019-24. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Resolution is passed, and congratulations, Samaritan. Okay, we'll adjourn as the Lebanon Renewal Agency and reconvene as the Lebanon City Council. And Cheetah Lake Park maintenance discussion. It will be myself and Jason Williams. If you'd like to come on up, Jason. One of the things I've talked with Jason about and Wayne and many of the people out at the Strawberry Festival is now that we own the park as a city, who does the maintenance and who's in charge and who calls the shots and decides what's going to be done out there. And I just want to discuss that so we can go over that and either come up with, I don't know if it's a policy or it's just really a discussion at this point to define the roles so that it's not confusing. Because I know that in some of the development things that we've been looking at with other neighboring properties, it's been kind of odd because there's been different people saying different things. So, Jason.
Yeah, so thanks, Mr. Mayor. Currently, we've got a dedicated volunteer group out there that have been taking care of some of the maintenance on the Cheetah Lake property. I think the thing to note, and I think the thing that group would agree, is we've increased the size of that park by 37 acres in the last 2 months. So the level of maintenance required is gonna compound quite a bit. It is a lot of stuff's happening for the city, on the city's behalf through volunteer effort, and I can't state how great that's been for us. I think as far as the management's concerned, everything just needs to function just as any other park property would, and that would be through our parks department. Reservations, meeting with customers, potential renters, and I think that's kind of the best understanding moving forward that we should probably take. I know Wayne has done a phenomenal job, and the foundation has done a phenomenal job of getting people, users into the property and helping us a lot. So I don't want to understate that because that's really been huge.
And they would still maintain that role, wouldn't they? The part of bringing people in and
I would hope
organizing
so. Yeah,
that kind of stuff.
I just want to get them off the hook for everything that they're required to do in their.
And then you're thinking working with them, and if they want to help on lawn mowing or whatever it is, then you can assign that, or they can.
I think right now the way it is we just kind of shove it off until Wayne starts screaming, and then we try to provide him some support in one way or another. But I think we need to have a little bit of presence out there for that. I really do, especially now with the additional property that we've acquired, because that's going to be a lot to maintain.
Yeah.
And I'd like to just have a plan to do that.
Okay. Questions? Wayne, would you like to?
You want to? I'd like to hear from Wayne
Yeah.
on the issue. I don't even understand what the question is. I don't understand what the question is. I guess I'm confused about the confusion.
It's kind of confusing right now of who's in charge out there. Because you've got
a power struggle?
No,
No.
It's more of there's the group that's volunteering is doing stuff, and our parks normally takes care of the parks, but they're not. So it's confusing.
Okay.
At least it's me.
As far as customers for the park that come to me because they have for years, I refer them to Tammy currently. I mean, I may get in Tammy also because she has limited knowledge of the activity that's there. She refers them to me after they sign the agreement. And then I work with them on their needs for the event which normally they are renting equipment from the foundation, which the revenue goes to the foundation, not the city. The rental money goes to the city for park improvement. We've had a couple of little bumps in the road with that, communication-wise, but it's getting better. And if there's a group that comes to the park, like we had a promoter come in here a month or so ago, I just give them a ride and show them the facility and tell them, that they'll have to discuss issues about rental and the activity and the cost of that with Tammy. I don't carry on any discussions further with that other than show them a park.
How about the maintenance?
The maintenance, Jason and his crew is helping out more and more all the time as I ask. I've decided that because I want to somewhat back away from doing as much as I have over the years, the foundation made an agreement. Was it 3 years or 5 years that we would continue to? 3 years, was it, Jason?
I think so, Wayne. Yeah, I think it's 3 years.
So we're in our second year. And then at that point in time, the foundation has met their agreement with the city as far as continuing to maintain and help maintain the park. The park host, we've had some ups and downs with that. We currently have a camp host that I'm excited about. He and his wife both work, but they still on their days off help me with mowing and watering, and that lets me take 4, 5, 6 hours, and I can stay at home and do my work at home while they're doing that. We have two other volunteers that are, one's almost daily and another one is a couple days a week. So that's 3 of us plus the camp host now, which is more than we've had forever.
Yeah.
And right now, to keep the park green requires a lot of time moving sprinklers. It's not hard work. It's just time consuming. Every 3 hours, I got to go from home to the park, home, back home. It actually cost me about $45 a week in fuel just back and forth.
I know you can't speak for the foundation, but do you think that the foundation would be open to then the city taking over all maintenance and then having you guys help out and working with Jason to help out so that even though it's, 3 years or the agreement?
Yeah, they're not going to have any disagreement with that.
Okay.
And I'm not even a member of the foundation. I just
I thought you were. Oh, okay. I thought you were.
What's the 3-year thing? I'm missing something.
There was an agreement that they were going to handle the park or continue to do the maintenance on the park for 3 years. I think that was when they handed over, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was in our original agreement. It was the foundation would continue to help run the events or to organize the events and provide some maintenance coverage.
I don't know, was there anything in there about the maintenance part of it? It was the events.
Yeah.
Well, the agreement I'm looking at says that the city is responsible for all maintenance anyways.
Oh. Okay.
Jason, you guys have to be so overloaded. I can't even imagine. Of all the people in the city, I mean, they're working their butts off.
Yeah.
So what's the feeling of how do you feel? I mean, are you adequately staffed to be able to do all this stuff we've said? Oh, and we'll do another 37 acres. And, what do you need?
Best response.
Yeah. I mean, it's been great having them out there. I think the property deal kind of was the driver. I think getting the new property. It's just trying to get a plan in place that we can maintain that to a level that we need to. And right now, the way it is, working together with Wayne, we'll just have to really improve some things that we do internally to help assist that. But we don't have much choice now, right? We own it.
Yeah.
Well, sure, but at some point you may say, I don't think we have enough staff to, you know.
And we passed that about 3 years ago.
Yeah, and I know everybody's kind of short-staffed and everybody's running on, but this body can't continue to add more things, and I know that we talk about, you know, BLT, oh, well, we need this little trail that washed out, and we need you to go fix that, and
Sure.
there's a lot of, we're very demanding on you right now, and
Right now?
it bothers me.
Yeah, we always are.
The
More so all the time.
The volunteers, and particularly me, I won't speak for the other two, but I'm out there for exercise, it's healthy. I have a passion for the park and keeping it beautified. They feel the same way. You know, I appreciate being able to take more hours out of the park, which is happening now. But I don't want to quit unless health tells me I have to.
Mm-hmm.
Unless Jason kicks me out.
Well, Jason, is that wrong to think that then you guys, I mean, because the city's in charge of that park now. It's a city park.
Yep.
So is it wrong to think that you guys can continue to maintain it at the level you are and then work with the volunteers over there, just knowing that the city is the one that directs the volunteers?
Yeah, I would hope that's what we come up with, yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure, because I know, like I said, with the property thing, there was a lot of confusion, so.
You know, if
Yeah.
I have a maintenance issue, I call Frank. If I need...
The smart Frank.
You know, fuel, you know, I had, when I get down to where I need fuel, Frank comes and gets the cans and fills them up, brings them back, and we're good to go for another week. Tim, Jason sent him out the other day to do some limb trimming and cut down some dead trees, and brought the stump grinder back, took care of the stumps so that we don't hit them with the mower. And that's kind of how we're communicating at this point in time.
Okay.
I try to not bug Jason too much because of his plate is extremely full. I don't always get everything I want, but he must have a reason. I think now it's working better than it ever has.
Okay.
Because we have basically 2 full-time volunteers, and then the extra that the city is helping with is huge, plus the park host.
Good.
Now, the important part, can my wife stop working every single 4th of July?
Probably not.
And the rest of us?
I think she has,
I want to go camping one 4th of July.
I know I'm not doing the 4th of July next year. After 20-some years.
Did you have any thoughts or concerns, Jason, other than that?
No, that's clear.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just wanted a little clarification.
Make sure our communication stays good, and I think Wayne's right. I think things are working well right now, so.
Yeah, and a big thank you to you, Wayne, and the other 2 volunteers I think we have. And I know there's just a lot of work that goes behind the scenes out there, you know, and you go there and it's beautiful, and if you go there like before an event, you see these guys out there sweating and working hard.
You know, the addition of the acreage increases, we've basically taken care of that acreage mowing-wise anyway. I don't know where we're going or where we're at with the Sullivan property, but that'll add a whole bunch.
Yeah, we got to just get it farmed and planted back in seed, and then it'll be ours to maintain again. So.
You know, we have some issues liability-wise that Jason didn't want to address because we didn't have the property. Now that we do, I'm sure he'll send Tim and his staff out to address those widowmakers and low-hanging limbs and trees that are dead that we need to get out of the way.
Okay.
The grass right now we don't mow because we don't water it, so it don't grow. But it does allow a lot of camping spots for those that are renting the park.
Jason, I think maybe we should get together and just look at the agreement and see if we need to update the agreement in any way.
Okay,
Okay.
sounds good.
But I certainly don't want to interfere with the parks and the city's management of parks. That's not my sole reason for being out there is to keep the park beautified to the point that I'm satisfied and do the best I can with the equipment I have.
And it is important to note, Wayne has made it a full-time job. It's every day, and it's typically all day that he's out there working, so.
Summertime with
thank him very
events,
much.
I'm 60, 70 hours a week. And I do get complaints from volunteers there where we're not paid anything. All the work that's done in the city parks in town, they're paid. So I have to stare that lightly.
All right, Jason, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And last up, number 7, we have City Manager's Report. Gary.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, my report is in the packet, but I have a couple of new items to discuss with you. You will probably recall when we were in our budget time that we talked about a project on Main Street to replace our street trees and then at the same time wire for holiday lights and for audio. That project has moved forward, and the current plan is to begin the project, I believe it's on September 10th. Jason and his crew plan to do the project in the early morning hours, I think between 4 and 8, and then be clear of downtown during the hours of commerce. They're going to just phase it as they go. If you're not aware of the tree issues, we had an arborist a couple years ago evaluate our trees. What he found were some structure issues with the trees, with some unfortunate growth that creates dangerous limbs if they're to break off. We have some disease. And then if you've taken an occasion lately to look at the scale that the trees have achieved at this point, many of them have now crested over the tops of the buildings, and so they've really grown out of scale for what you would typically look for a street tree in a downtown. In addition to that, if we're going to go ahead and create the electrical system for holiday lighting, we'll be going into those root wells, and at that point, we're going to be creating problems for the trees. So it seems to be the time to go ahead and make some changes with the trees. I wasn't at the meeting of trees and trails, but I understand that there were some species selected for the project. Is that right, Jason? Yes. Okay. So I just wanted to make the council aware of that during mid to late September that project will be going on, and as much as possible the crew is going to try to pull it off without too much disturbance to the actual business activity downtown. We are ramping up right now with an information campaign in coordination with the Downtown Association to make sure all of the business owners and building property owners are aware. There's already been some of that work done, and Cassie's notified, I think, everybody at this point, but we're going to redouble those efforts and make sure as we come up to the weeks approaching the project that everybody is aware and on board so that we're not creating any shock when suddenly trees are being removed. So I just want to make you aware of that. By the time we come back for the next council meeting, project should be underway. Any questions on that? Okay, and then the next one, under public comment, today we had two folks addressing our no connection policy for wastewater. I know that Ron and I will be contacted by those parties tomorrow wanting to know if the council has taken any kind of position or action. So I'm asking you if that's something the council is prepared to do. I would suggest that if you are, that you could carve out a couple of exceptions that could then apply to the entire community, that anybody who had an active buy-sell agreement on July 10 when you enacted the new policy, or anybody who had acquired a development grant for the creation of affordable housing, that those projects would be allowed to go forward. That way you'd establish a line, and it wouldn't just be an arbitrary letting a couple businesses do it. That way, if we had someone else come in and they had an active buy-sell agreement, we wouldn't have to come back to you. There's only so many of those that are out there that existed on July 10. So,
do we know about how many?
Well, I thought that was already included, that when Ron was talking about that anything that was already in the process when they said, okay, starting now, we can't.
Approval process.
In the planning
But not a transfer of like a real estate process. So all of those, right, that were in the middle had already submitted planning.
Yeah, so what we talked about at the council meeting was, anybody that's gone through the planning process and has planning approval we would accept connection to it. And that's where we kind of drew that line in the sand. What we're finding is there's some, say the one with the farm worker housing, we've met with them. They have a letter from the city when they applied for their loan, and that's a year ago, right? So things have happened since then. OS, how long have they had their stuff on the market? There's those things. There's a couple of options we could take. It probably warrants coming back with an agenda item next council meeting, if council chooses to do so, or wants to entertain a change. There's ways that we can, if you've got existing infrastructure in place, i.e. you've got a sewer main that runs through or to your property and we're not extending anything. The reality is these connections are not going to change the situation that we're in. It makes no difference whatsoever. The reality is DEQ doesn't like these connections, and we just need to be prepared for that. And the other caveat to that is if we get this loan money and we get going through, which we'll know in probably December, and some of the changes, we'll probably turn loose all this anyway and just run a little bit of a risk that we're going to have overflows, knowing full well that we're not going to have enough new connection to change whether we're going to have an overflow or not. I mean, at this point, that's kind of where we're at.
It just feels bad that we've got these two entities that, unbeknownst to us, they're putting monies in and they're doing things, and these things are happening, and all of a sudden, they find out, oops, sorry. And it just doesn't feel right.
And we've met with both of them, and basically we've heard them out, and from a staff level, it needs to be a policy change that we talk about. I don't want to be the one sitting in the room going, you can, you can't. I mean, we do not want to go down that road at all. So we have to have some way to, unless we bring everyone back to the city council for approval, I mean,
Well, and what I would say is it can't be discretionary.
Right.
We're not, it has to be a bright line rule of we are treating everybody in a certain category the same, and we're treating everybody in another category the same. And what that line is the problem.
Yeah.
So Ron, a question in regards to the Veterans Complex on Airport.
They're fine.
They're fine?
Yep, they're out of that. They're north of that. Basically, it's everything south of Walker Road. So they're up there. There is no, model's going to tell you that it's a capacity, but we know better from what we've seen. I mean, we're okay up there.
Okay, good.
Yeah. That piece. It's just everything south and this corridor that's over off of Russell Drive, and that's where the impact is.
Yeah, I'd like to see you come back with something. Maybe Trey can work with you, and then we need to find a solution for these people.
Yeah.
It isn't fair.
And we're hoping
they are ready to go, and we shouldn't be stopping that. That's easier from here.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's been a very big challenge. We've spent an enormous amount of time trying to work with people and trying to find ways to do it. But
I have to be honest on the Oregon State one, and just kind of thinking through this. That's a more difficult one than the farm workers because they have expended money. They have got a grant. They have money that have been put into the ground, right? They have the sewer. Well, and they have the sewer. They've actually spent money towards the sewer already. Aren't they the ones that have the lines already?
Well, both projects have infrastructure in place. they didn't necessarily put it there. Well, no, they didn't. I don't think the credit union put it there either.
Yeah.
But they do have infrastructure in place.
So, I mean, I guess the problem I have is the one about having a contract in place. I mean, really, what's the difference between having a contract in place for somebody to buy it and develop it as opposed to somebody who just owns property and now wants to develop it?
Yeah.
That's a tough distinction for me. Or
how about some kind of proof of a date that they went into this real estate negotiation on X date, which was way before when we did the moratorium?
Or enter the planning process.
Yeah, or the planning process.
Well, okay, but I don't think they've been in the planning process. And I'm just thinking out loud, and there's, we can think about it. I just wanted to point it out that one, I have some concerns about how we're going to deal with that one.
The existing infrastructure in place is probably the easiest way to do it because there's going to be the least impact to the system. Because there's not, I mean, it's infill lots, it's a few here, it's a few there, but where the critical piece comes from is where there isn't sewer now, and that's where you get your big 400-lot subdivision or 100-lot subdivision. Those are the things we're looking at.
Ron, do you think the credit union property, the sale of that, did that buyer go away in the next 30 days before you come back to us?
Yeah, I mean, that's entirely possible. Entirely possible. The amount of sewer that place is going to put out is I think it was less than basically a household, a single-family household. So it's very minimal. And again, it's not the sewer that's the issue. It's all the DEQ rules and we're riding the fine line right now. I just don't want to go over that line. So.
Maybe we can contact those two people. Are you in contact with them, Gary? We can contact those two people and at least let them know that we're considering it, and we'll talk about it at our next meeting. So.
Yeah, and I've talked to Bill. Bill was here tonight.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I've talked to both of those parties. So we'll let them know.
Okay.
And I'll bring something back for the next meeting, and I will contact him if there's some. If it looks like it's going to fall through, we'll do something at that point.
That's good. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Next up, items from council.
I just had one. As I look through the city manager's report every month, I appreciate it, and I like seeing everyone's monthly projects and progress they've made on things. But the one thing I don't see, and I'm wondering if it's just because of who she reports to, nothing from the economic catalyst position on what she's doing or what her projects are.
Yeah, that would fall under community development.
Okay.
But it's a good point. We can certainly have Alicia make that connection for you guys.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. Anything else? Okay, next up we have an opportunity for the public to comment to the council. Is anybody that would like to speak before council? Okay, seeing none. Items from press? Do we have anything from the press? All right, nothing from press. Okay, next scheduled meeting, September 11th, 2019, regular session. October 19th, 2019, 6 p.m., regular session. And at this point, we're going to recess the regular session and go into executive session once we clear the chambers.